Hey guys, so I just finished watching the Cloverfield Paradox, which is actually the third film in the Cloverfield franchise. It was just released on Netflix right after the end of Super Bowl 52, where the Philadelphia Eagles beat the New England Patriots. Now, before we get into talking about the movie itself, let me talk a little bit about the marketing. Now, this film has actually been in post-production for quite some time. We actually didn't know very much about it at all. We were assuming we were going to get a trailer for it during the Super Bowl, and then it would be eventually released in theaters a few months later, or kind of your standard formula for movie releases. This one completely changed the game, and it was actually a massive genius move, in my opinion, by Netflix, by marketing with some short trailers during the game. I think there was only really one trailer during the game, one right after the game to let you know that it was now streaming on Netflix, but it essentially was just a quick little trailer and then just told you that it was coming soon. And then at the end of the Super Bowl, it actually said it's available now. You went to Netflix and it was actually available to watch. This is actually a really smart move to think that we might be getting to a time where you can actually watch a trailer for a movie, and then within a few hours, if not minutes later, you can actually go and either stream it or actually watch it in the theaters, whatever the situation may be, that you have that direct access to it. You don't have to wait months at a time to be able to go see a movie. I think that this marketing strategy might be a game changer. I'm not sure how well it'll work for mass media releases in terms of releasing a movie trailer and then going to the theater and seeing it, but in terms of releasing a trailer and then being able to go to your device, your phone, your PlayStation, your Apple TV, whatever it may be, your computer, and actually be able to watch the product within minutes, hours, whatever later is extremely smart. And I think that's kind of going to be the future of movies, possibly in the near future, but it might take some time to get there. We'll see how that goes. But let's go ahead and get back to the Cloverfield Paradox. So the Cloverfield Paradox actually stars Daniel Bruhl and Chris O'Dowd and several other actors who unfortunately I don't know how to pronounce their names, so instead of butchering them, I'm just going to say that they were in this movie as well. And this film is actually directed by a Nigerian director by the name of Julius Onoa. Now, the story of the film is that it actually takes place before even the first Cloverfield, or at least that's how I interpreted it, or at least what I've read online. So essentially what's happening is that these astronauts are up on this International Space Station sort of situation, trying to solve an energy crisis that is happening on Earth. So essentially they're using this movie was originally called, I think, the God Particle or something along those lines. And that's essentially what they're trying to create. They're trying to create this matter or energy source that is essentially undying. Like it will always be able to be used and can constantly be able to be used by people on Earth and never die out like fossil fuels or anything else, any other reliable energy source. So essentially it's an unending, untapped energy. So they're up in space trying to work on this, and something goes wrong, and the whole thing, they're essentially now isolated. I don't want to give away too much because there are certain elements of the story that I think are really interesting and worth finding out as you're watching it. So I don't want to give away too much. But they're essentially isolated for quite some time after this event happens when they're trying to create this energy source. And they're essentially stranded and have to fight for survival in ways that they really didn't quite expect to be going through on this mission. Now, I was really excited to see Cloverfield Paradox as soon as I saw the trailer for it and found out that it was actually going to be available as soon as the game was over. As soon as I finished watching the game, I actually went straight to my Netflix, ran home, went straight to my Netflix, and started watching it because I was so excited for it because I really loved the first one. 10 Cloverfield Lane I thought was pretty good, but I was super excited to see what this one was going to have to offer. And to be completely honest, I really don't know how to feel about it. But before we delve deeper into the movie itself, let's go ahead and talk about some of the performances. Now, the performances overall were just sort of fine. There was no real standout, I would say, in terms of the actors or the performances themselves. Everybody just sort of did their part. And that's kind of where the film kind of falls flat a lot, is with the characters themselves. There's really no character that you can sort of connect with and really feel engaged with and root for. They all just sort of are off doing their own things. Some of the storylines and their backstories are explained. Other ones are just sort of left dangling out in the wind. They don't really give you a lot of meat or weight with these characters to really care about. They're just sort of out there in space, and now they're dealing with this situation. There's nobody to really connect with and really feel emotionally connected with and feel like the weight and you're rooting for them. There's none of that. There's just these characters in space and you kind of just hope for the best. Now, as for the movie itself and the story, there were definitely a lot of pros for me. A lot of weird sort of sci-fi things were happening on this ship that were right up my alley. But on the other hand, there were a lot of things that had me leaving with this sort of odd feeling. Like I didn't really know how to feel about certain aspects of the story and how it even connects to the whole Cloverfield franchise, which is kind of disappointing. And by no means do I mean to knock this film in any way. I absolutely love the original Cloverfield, which came out in 2008. It was a massive surprise for me, and I continue to watch it to this day and continue to love it. As for 10 Cloverfield Lane, I think it was a bit of a departure. I do think it was good, however. I just think it was quite different and a different storytelling technique than what the first film did, which is there's nothing wrong with that. I just really liked more of the involved sort of action stuff that the first film gave us. Now, in terms of this film, The Cloverfield Paradox, I definitely feel it was the least effective of the franchise, and I just don't feel like it had that weight to it. There was no characters to connect with, like the first and second one at least did pretty well, in my opinion. There was no real action-y set pieces. There were some things that were happening, but nothing that really gave you that emotional sort of big spectacle wow scene. There were some things that happened where they had to detach stuff, where things started like flashing on screens, but there was no big moment in this movie that you felt like that's the moment you're going to remember this movie for. There were just sort of on a space station, and that's the story and the elements of the story that you sort of have to rely on to remember and keep you connected and engaged with what's happening in the film. And as much as I may have liked certain elements of this movie, there were also a lot of cons. There were just so many different things I don't know how to feel about. And I think that's what I really want out of the Cloverfield franchise the most, and that's just to connect one film with the other. Even if it's just small things, I really like the thing that they do with the Cloverfield movies is how this massive event, this world sort of, I don't want to call it an epidemic, but catastrophes and things that are happening, some with these monsters and everything like that, that they're from different perspectives of different people all around the world, how they're connecting, how different things are happening. And so you kind of have to put the puzzle pieces together. But I think because it's only the third film in the franchise, we haven't quite gotten all the pieces yet, so it's harder to connect them. So when you're seeing these movies, you want to have some sort of thread or things that touch with the other films in order to really connect them and be like, oh, okay, now I see that was from that movie, so it really sort of connects and makes sense. This movie is supposed to be taking place before or right around the first film, which makes it very confusing based on the technology and other things that are happening with what's happening on Earth in connection with what happened on Earth in the 2008 film. There's a lot of disconnect, things I didn't quite feel matched up. And I think that's one of the things that just didn't make sense. It didn't feel like there was that connecting thread, but then again, maybe we're just not there yet. The fourth film has been in production again for quite some time. I think it's actually done filming. Supposedly, though, from what I've heard, it's taking place in World War II, which really makes no sense. I want it to connect with these other films. What's happening in the now, what's happened since the 2008 film, all the way up to whatever catastrophe may be in the most recent part, which I think was probably going to be 10 Cloverfield Lane, but there's really no set timeline on that. But anyway, the Cloverfield Paradox just sort of left me feeling meh. I didn't really feel like there was something that really connected me to it. There were a lot of cool elements that I was definitely very into, those sci-fi weird things that were happening, but it just wasn't enough for me to be in love with it as much as I was with the first one or certain elements of the second one. It just didn't have that big connecting piece. And the way that it ends, I feel like they could have easily connected it back with the first one, but then it really went the complete opposite direction and just even made me more confused with how it ends right after. I don't really want to spoil it for you, but something happens and then another thing happens, and I thought they were going to be connected with the first one, but then they completely ruined it. And I just don't know how to feel about it. I think that we need more pieces to the puzzle and be having that connecting thread, which unfortunately this movie just didn't really have for me, and it was just missing a lot to it. But it did have some things that were definitely worth watching for, and I think for that reason, the overall grade that I have to give the Cloverfield Paradox is a C minus. So guys, those are my thoughts on the Cloverfield Paradox. If you have seen it, be sure to let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. If you have not seen it yet, it's sort of worth checking out. If you do feel like watching it, it is streaming on Netflix, is now available. Be sure you go and watch it if you want to and come back and talk about it in the comment section. I'd love to hear your opinion on it and how it fits with the overall franchise. But other than that, that's really all I have for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.